Okay, welcome. I'm Helen Graves, instructional designer with CVC and @ONE. CVC is the California Virtual Campus, and @ONE stands for Online Network of Educators. It's the professional development arm of the CVC for our community college system, and I am delighted that you're here with me today. We're going to take a look at how to make documents accessible. The good news is most of the content authoring applications that you already use have accessibility checkers built right into them. That includes Canvas, but also the Microsoft suite for Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and Adobe Acrobat for PDFs. I'm going to start off with my impression of a broken record because I say this all the time. The first line of defense when it comes to making content accessible and when it comes to inaccessible documents is to put the learning content on a Canvas page. And there are two reasons for that. First, HTML is the best environment, meaning Canvas pages, is the best, most user-friendly environment for both screen reader devices and mobile devices. Secondly, it is so much easier to remediate the Canvas page using the rich content editor for proper accessibility formatting than it is to have to remediate a PDF or even a Word document. And if your college has enabled PopeTech, which is a free accessibility checker integration for Canvas, that is a game changer for people. It's really making it easy to be sure that everything is properly formatted. We know a lot of faculty rely on PDFs, at least in part, because, I don't know, maybe a decade or so ago, before Microsoft products and open source compatible versions were so freely available, instructors were often told to save everything as a PDF so that they were accessible to students, meaning students who were on a Mac. Many people have interpreted that to mean that making something into a PDF automatically means it's accessible for those using a screen reader. Alas, the word accessible has two different meanings in those different contexts. With PDFs, if the original Word document was not formatted for accessibility, the converted PDF is not going to be either. And in fact, at times, even if the original document was formatted properly, new formatting issues sometimes get introduced during the conversion process. So here's the official recommendation for working with content documents. Canvas pages are best whenever possible. Word is second best, and PDF is a last resort. I always say PDFs are a PIA. But what about PowerPoints, you cry? Well, to some degree, PowerPoints are kind of in a class of their own, if only because pedagogically, the majority of slide decks I see being used are often publisher created, which means two things in my mind. One, they're probably not fully accessible, no matter what the publisher is telling you. And two, they probably contain a fair amount of fluff because they're provided as a way to bulk up the publisher's offerings, not because the slide decks were thoughtfully crafted educational tools. So PowerPoints converted to a PDF are even worse because in the conversion process, each slide just becomes a single image, which then needs a full and complete text description for anyone using a screen reader device to know what's happening on the slide. So let's talk about what it takes to remediate a PowerPoint deck. You can either keep it in slide format and use the built-in accessibility tool to check and remediate each slide. You could turn it into a series of short video lectures, which can then be captioned so that each slide deck is being used as a visual supplement to a presentation, a spoken presentation, as PowerPoints were originally intended. You could also format the text and images, take them off the slides, and create Canvas pages within a module. so that you're utilizing the information, but you're doing it in a way that's going to be more user-friendly. When I'm working with an instructor in the course design academy process, I often ask them if they have PowerPoints. And in fact, I'm going to mute someone. I'll ask them to think about the pedagogical value that they see in the PowerPoint. What is it adding to the course? And frequently, once they realize how much work it is to make a PowerPoint fully accessible, a lot of instructors say, you know, it's really not worth it. I'm going to find a better way to get that content across. So even though I am definitely not a fan of PowerPoints because they weren't really intended to be used as standalone content in an asynchronous course, I don't tell people they can't use them. I just want to make sure you fully understand the pitfalls, both pedagogically and technically, and then you can decide if you want to spend the time making them accessible. So let's take a look in the documents, and we'll start with Microsoft and look at how to make those accessible. So I've got a bunch of different documents open. We'll start with Word. All Microsoft applications have a built-in accessibility checker. Yay! Microsoft's built-in checker isn't going to catch everything, and it doesn't actually fix the problems for you either. You need to go in and see what alerts they're telling you and then fix them, but it is going to help you find and know what to fix in a lot of cases. I'm on a Mac, so I can get to the checker right from the tools menu up here. And are you still seeing my screen? The little green thing went away. Can somebody nod if you're, or thumbs up? Okay, good. I hate when the green outline goes away. I start to panic. Up here at the top on a Mac, I have the tools menu. And when I click it, I can come down and check accessibility. I believe on a PC, and it's been a long time since I've used a PC, you, I think, are going to go on the ribbon, you're going to go to the review tab, and then you should see a check accessibility button. In older versions, I believe you had to go to file and then check for issues. Anyhow, you can always Google how to check for how to find the accessibility checker on your version of Microsoft. All right, so I've clicked into it and I get a report that is telling me issues and alerts that are going on with my document. So just know that it isn't foolproof when it comes to headings, lists, and meaningful link text. You're going to need to know how to check those things manually. But it does tell you other things. So it's showing me right here that I have an image, and I don't know if you can see this, if I can make it bigger. It's not making that text bigger for you. Yeah. Sorry, I realize this is a little bit small. It's not making it bigger for you. But anyhow, it's telling me I have a missing alternative text. And what's kind of cool is it says picture 4. So I can just click picture 4 and it will jump to the offending image, highlight it for me so I know exactly what I'm looking at. And then I can deal with remediating it, in this case, adding alt text. The other thing is down below the inspection results field, you're going to see information about why is this a problem? Why do you need to fix it? And then steps for how to fix it. So if you're new to this game and you don't always remember everything you hear in all these many webinars, just know that the Microsoft tools will walk you through how to fix this stuff. So I'm going to right click and go to the edit alt text option. And well, maybe you can't see, but what it says currently is cartoon-plagiarism.jpg. Clearly not going to be meaningful text to a student listening to a description of the image. They're not going to have any idea what that is. So something more along the lines of, and I'm not going to take the time to type it, but cartoon about plagiarism, 2 men in jail, one saying Grand Theft Auto, you, and the other responding plagiarism. That would be descriptive alt text. So the other thing it showed, and then when I fix it, so let me put good alt text. Well, cartoon about, I'm just going to short term what I said, plagiarism, never know how to spell it. You also have an option to mark as decorative. So if it were an image that was really just there for visual interest, it wasn't part of the learning content, you can tag it as decorative, and then you don't have to worry about alt text at all. I can come back to my accessibility checker, and you will now see that warning about alt text is gone. Because what the algorithm, now keep in mind, these tools are algorithms. They are not little human beings back there checking your document for you. So it's just going on certain parameters that have been built into it. And in that case with alt text, it said it was an error because of the .jpeg at the end of it. If I had left cartoon hyphen plagiarism and just taken off the JPEG, I would still get rid of the alert, but that would not be good alt text. So, there's kind of both an art and a science to using these tools. But once you fix the tool, in theory, it goes away from your report. So you don't have to worry about that one anymore. In PowerPoint, reading order has to do with both tables. Excuse me, we're not in PowerPoint yet. In Word, reading order usually has to do with a table. And that's because someone who isn't looking at the table, they're using their keyboard to tab from cell to cell to cell. So you need to make sure that the tab is going in the proper order. It's not jumping all over, or it's not going vertically when really it should be going horizontally. That's not something the algorithm can check. So it will often just, well, it will always just say check reading order, and that's something you need to do manually. It will jump you to the table so you know exactly what it's talking about, but then you need to do a little bit of detective work to make sure that the tab is working properly. And then it also tells me hard to read contrast. So I'll click on it and it will take me to this one. I'm not sure why it's telling me, because that's a dark enough red when I checked it. But in any case, I would fix that red to make it a little darker. When I click the next one, this actually is also one that I thought I had checked, but I wanted to make sure you had errors to see. So both of those I would fix. This one where it says, here's another example, that's actually where I'm demonstrating purposefully bad contrast. So that one I wouldn't fix. I would just know that that's an error that I intentionally included in the document. So it's as simple as clicking the tool, getting your readout, and then walking through the errors and alerts in order to fix them, keeping in mind the steps are down below to help you. A screen reader device is going to read the file name when navigating from into a document from some other, say you're linking to a document from Canvas. It's going to read the file name. Because of that, it's kind of helpful to understand how it's going to read it. Special characters, here's the thing about screen reader devices. They're not universal in the way they approach things, which is kind of a bummer for those of us trying to format, because we can format it perfectly for one particular screen reader device, and it may not, depending on the settings on somebody else's device, it may not read the same way. So you just have to kind of learn the basic rules and do the best you can do. But in any case, special characters like hyphens, underscores, asterisks, those kinds of things may or may not be read as part of the title. So it's generally best when you're titling a document that you're going to link to, that you not include those special characters in the title. Just use spaces to separate the words. Don't worry about dashes or hyphens or any of that kind of stuff, or dots. Words that are separated by hyphens typically will be read as individual words, but you can also just use a space because it will also often read the hyphen, and that can get irritating for those listening. Words that are separated by capital letters. And I don't know if you can see, did I do it in this case? I didn't. Well, it's probably too small for you to see, but the title is Demo Accessibility Checklist. If I had all three of those words together, no spacing, but I had the capital D for demo, the capital A for accessibility, and the capital C for checklist, most screen readers are going to read that as separate words. It's called camel case, where it's going up and down in a single word. To keep things simple, it's best to just keep the file name as readable words, use spaces, don't use abbreviations, just, make it something that would be meaningful. Another thing of note when you're in a document is that images, and let me go and find my image again, that are positioned using the wrap text feature won't usually be properly read by a screen reader. Even though it may not look as pretty, images should always be styled as inline rather than wrapped. And let me show you what happens. So look over here on the inspection results. When I come in and change, right now, this is inline. If I change it to tight, suddenly I get an error up here saying the images are not inline. That's an accessibility bummer. And so you don't want to do that. The way I made it work for here was I just simply had it be inline and then I centered it, and that's fine. You just don't want wrapped text. All Microsoft products have the same built-in tool, which is super nice. So if we go next to, actually, yeah, I'm going to do that and I'll come to questions. And I see things in chat. I can't get to them now, but we will get your questions answered. So in PowerPoint, same option. I come up to the tools menu, I check accessibility, and it shows me what my errors and alerts are. Technically, errors are things that you need to fix. They're going to really be a problem for a student using a screen reader. Warnings are things that probably aren't the end of the world, but if you can fix it, it's best to fix it. So again, we have a lot of missing alternative text. I click on it, it jumps to the slide, and then it highlights the image for me. And ironically enough, this was a PowerPoint I made years ago when I first got into all of this work. And the topic is creating accessible content, but I didn't do a good job of making my PowerPoint accessible. In my own defense, it was because I knew I wasn't going to be sharing it with anyone, but even so, always a good habit, just make it accessible and then you don't have to worry about it. So anyhow, this does not have alt text. I would follow the same procedure as on a Word document. Right click, go down to edit alt text, see what it says. And in this case, there's nothing, not even a file title. So I would want to put in. However, here's something that happens. PowerPoint, when you, how do I want to say this in a way that's going to make sense? PowerPoint has built-in templates that already have layouts on the slides that are set up, and those layouts are formatted for accessibility. So if you are editing or creating your own PowerPoint deck or editing some other PowerPoint deck, do not just insert text boxes and images and things willy-nilly, because this is what happens. This is an image and it's not even being registered by the screen reader really. Plus it's an image with a whole lot of text in it. So I was doing a shortcut by just making it be an image, but clearly trying to include all of that information plus a table in your alt text description, not going to be a good idea. What you want to do instead is actually set up the information using the text fields on the slide itself rather than just slapping an image up there. But when, well, I won't even say whenever possible, always use the built-in template slides. Don't just create a blank, take a blank slide and start adding images and text to it, because it's not going to be formatted properly. And it's very, very difficult to make those things readable by a screen reader. Let me show you a little tip. If I go into view and I go into outline view, you'll see over here on the left, it's now showing me text instead of a little screenshot of each slide. This, what's showing here, is what a screen reader device would read. Notice right here on this slide, it's picking up, because I used part of the built-in template. I use the header for the template, so it's reading that. I use the subheader down here, use Canvas's rich content editor, but then I just added this text box. So if this were a PowerPoint deck being given to a student using a screen reader, they would not even be aware that that box of text was there. So that's what I mean about being really careful to use the templates. And then look here on slide 6. I just used a blank slide, slapped my images on there, slapped my text box on there. And as far as a screen reader user is going to see, there's nothing on that slide. It's totally blank. So you just need to kind of be thinking about the process of using a PowerPoint in order to make it accessible if you're going to be using PowerPoints. Okay, I think I'm going to hop on to the next thing and then we'll come to questions. We can always come back to these if you have a particular question. So Excel, again, Microsoft product. So it's going to have the checker. Come up here, click check accessibility. I get my little results field over here. The thing to be aware of with an Excel is it's essentially a huge table. So you really just want to follow the same types of rules that you would in formatting a table. You want to make sure you've got column and row headings present if that's appropriate. You want to make sure you're being careful about empty cells or merge cells, which a lot of people use as a way of formatting for appearance, but actually creates accessibility issues. Because images can't be associated with a specific cell or a region in an Excel sheet, you really should avoid using an image in Excel. Just stick to text or numbers. The titles and the headings section, and I don't use Excel a lot, so let me see if I can find it. Nope. Insert, maybe it's there. Well, whoever knows Excel, anyhow, there is a place where it says headings, you know, heading 1, heading 2, whatever. Those actually just make it be that heading level. It doesn't actually tag it as a column or row header. So that's where you really need to be aware of the distinction between a heading level and a header in a table. Don't let them confuse you in an Excel. If you're using the charts tool in Excel, it's best to also provide a text-based table equivalent, because the charts with, you know, the pretty graphs and all that kind of stuff and the Venn diagrams and whatever else, those are not easily remediable, whatever the word would be, not easy to make remediated format for accessibility. So creating an equivalent in text format and then perhaps linking that the student to a document that explains what that image is supposed to be representing would work better. You'll notice the one error warning I'm getting here is the default sheet names. So down here are the sheet names. And if you think about it, hearing sheet 1 is going to do nothing to tell the student what information or data is on sheet 1 or sheet 2 or sheet 3. So to avoid cognitive overload and frustration, you want to make sure you're always, even if you only have one sheet on your Excel, you always want to make sure and give it a meaningful name. And I don't remember what this is, but I would right click and I would say rename, and then I would be able to give that sheet some kind of descriptive name so that the student would know what to expect when they go into that sheet. I am not an expert in discipline-specific uses of Excel. So if you've got a particular use case for what you want to do with Excel and you're not quite sure of how to approach it accessibility-wise, I would recommend you talk with your campus DSPS folks or the California Community College Accessibility Center. I'll put their link in the chat. They are going to be well-versed on creating accommodations for very specific situations like that. CCC, can't type and talk. Okay, so there's their web address. All right, let's look at the elephant in the room, PDFs. which, as I say, are a PIA. It is possible to make PDFs accessible, but it's not simple. The same formatting is required with headings, alt text, descriptive link text, lists, tables, all of that stuff. But you've also got an added issue of what are called tags, which are essentially the equivalent of the HTML behind the scenes that tells the screen reader device what type or format a specific piece of content is. Is it a header, a paragraph, a table, an image, whatever? I'm going to put in chat a resource if you are somebody who wants to know more about tags for PDFs. It is, ironically, a PDF, not created by me. Adobe has a built-in checker. So when you're reviewing a document, that's what you're going to want to use to check the accessibility of it. And let me show you how you find that tool. If your PDF is open, it may or may not have opened with those tools open. So if not, you can just click the arrow in the gray bar to open and close. If I go to the little man symbol, accessibility, and click it, I now have the option to do an accessibility check. I'm going to click it. It will tell me stuff that I never pay attention to. I just leave it default. And then I say, start checking. And I immediately get a readout over on the left side this time of what errors and issues are going on with the document. When I open up the dropdown, I can see there are two, you'll notice, that have a blue question mark: logical reading order and color contrast. Both of those are things the algorithm cannot check. You have to look at those manually. So if you know, for example, your document is only black and white, don't need to even look for color. And reading order has to do with, again, tables and things like that. So you would want to do a little check with your tab tool to make sure things are going in the proper order that they should be. What else do I, well, let me show you the other two. Primary language title failed. And then here on the page errors, tags totally failed and tab order totally failed. So there's some kind of big things that would need a little bit of monkeying with in order to make it accessible. If you've got the original source document in Word or PowerPoint, make that accessible first, and then try again creating a PDF out of it. It's not recommended. Let me show you back here on PowerPoint. I've got the Acrobat option. That is the best way to create a PDF. It's not recommended that you save as and then check PDF. For some reason, that's not as reliable. Some of the accessibility information ends up not being formatted correctly when you use the save as method. And that makes your PDF harder to repair once you're in Acrobat. So it's best to use the built-in Acrobat tool when you're going to convert. So make your source document as accessible, try converting, and then see if your PDF is accessible. If not, you have another option. The little top icon above the accessibility checker is Action Wizard. And that will actually help you make the document accessible. It's not perfect. So even though it very optimistically says make accessible, you may run this tool and still end up with an error or two, but it's going to be a lot better. When I click it, it's going to, I have to say start. It's going to walk me through a number of steps that is what's going to make the document accessible. And you can see right here, if you recall over in the errors, the title failed. And now I can see why. There's no title that is readable by a screen reader device. So I would need to uncheck the box and put in a title. And I don't remember what this is called. So we'll just call it practice document. Whoop. If I could type, oh, for crying out loud, Helen. Then I would say, okay, and it'll take me to the next parameter. The language that is being read is, the document language is English, so I'm going to leave it as the default. Click OK. It does its thing, and it sometimes takes a little bit. Then it asks me, is this a form? Are there form fields that we need to worry about? In this case, no. I can just skip that step. Then it wants to know what language should it be read out loud in. Again, I almost invariably leave it as the default English. Does its thing. Now it's telling me it's going to look for anything that is tagged as an image. And so we can look at the alt text, because you have to look at that manually. The algorithm is not going to know what is appropriate alt text for any given image. A person has to do that. So I say, okay. It tells me there's 3 images. It highlights it. In this case, the banner is an image. So I would want to, for alt text, put in whatever text is included in the banner. I'm not going to make you watch while I type badly. Then I use the arrow to go to the second image. That one is a little harder to find. I'm thinking it might be down at the bottom here. But again, you would do the same thing. If there's text in the image, that would be your alt text. If it's an actual image, you would write a meaningful description that would help the student understand its instructional value. And then go to the next one. So then I would be done. I would save and close. Then it says, okay, we're ready to check. And it takes you back to that check step that we did way at the beginning. So I'll click it. And some of my issues went away, but it now looks like I've got some other issues that weren't even recognized before. So I'd need to go in and fix the alt text, which I didn't really do. I'd need to check headings. As you can see, doing a PDF and making it really accessible, it's kind of a convoluted journey that is really often takes quite a bit of time and research, because now you got to go figure out how to do all of this stuff. There are some resources that I'll share with you in a moment. Before we do that, and before we get to questions, because I know I've just given you a lot of information, if you're using a PDF and no source document is available, all you've got is the PDF because somebody gave it to you that way and you don't have the Word, you don't have the PowerPoint, whatever. What you can do is open the PDF in Acrobat and then export it to Microsoft Word or PowerPoint if it's a PowerPoint. And Microsoft will do its best to take the layout and the content from the PDF and convert it to a Word format so that you can then remediate it in Word. Same with the PowerPoint. Then you would be able to use that information. And I would, because PDFs are a PIA, I would recommend leaving it in the Word or the PowerPoint format rather than making it a PDF, because you'll just have to remediate the PDF. And of course, copying it and making it a Canvas page would be even best. So I'm going to give you a couple of resources, and then I want to take a sip of water and find out what questions you have. The first one is a short bite-sized Canvas episode I did on turning pages. It's about pages versus PDFs. And so it talks about the whole rationale behind it and gives you some ideas for dealing with PDFs. The next resource is a short little tutorial that actually walks you through how to convert a PDF to a page. There's not one right way to do it because it depends on whether you're on a PC or a Mac. It depends on your version of Adobe or whatever PDF reader you've got. There's all kinds of things that play into how clean, when you copy the information off the PDF page, how clean it comes over to Canvas. So that video will walk you through some best practices to help you convert to pages. This California Community College Accessibility Center has created some self-paced courses that take you through making PDFs, Word, and PowerPoint documents accessible. there's a lot of information in those. And so it may be more information than you really can absorb. So just pick and choose what works for you. If you go to the @ONE website, and let me go here, show you this. So I will put this in the Helen, there we go. Online network of educators.org. I'll put it in the chat. If you then go to courses in our navigation here and go to the course list and then choose self-paced courses, that will jump you down to a bunch of different self-paced courses, and you can see accessibility in Canvas, PDF, video captioning, etc. So those are things you can just enroll in and get what information you can that works for you. There is also Adobe Tutorials. If you are somebody that really feels the need to learn how to work with PDFs, Adobe has created tutorials for making them accessible. Just put it in the chat. I also found a very nice video tutorial created by someone named Melissa Green, who is the accessibility technologist at the University of Alabama. And I'm going to put her YouTube in there. It's pretty user-friendly, given the topic of PDFs. And so you might find that helpful if you want to become adept at working with PDFs. Again, PDFs should typically be your last option. But if you find yourself needing to remediate a PDF, those are resources that can help. All right, I'm going to go back here. And if you don't want to open stuff in chat, you could maybe take a screenshot of this slide if you want to be able to look at it later. The thing I always do is open up the links in chat and then just bookmark them for later. So I'm going to open up for questions. I'm also going to look back and see if there's anything that I can answer. What about the Google Suite of apps? Jamie, I'm not sure what you, oh, Google Suite. There's something called Grackle, which is an extension that will do accessibility checking for Google Docs. I don't know if Grackle is what you would also use for slides. Slides are a little bit harder to make fully accessible than a Google Doc. Again, depending on whether you're on a Mac or a PC, probably your best bet if you are using Google Slides or, Slides. Use Grackle if you're using Doc. For slides, follow the regular formatting. So make sure you're using headings, you're adding alt text, you're using true list, all of those things. And I don't think there is a built-in checker. So what I probably would recommend is you check Google Slides for accessibility and see, depending on what kind of computer or whatever browser you're using, see what it says. And that may help you. But if you're following the standard, the big 7, headings, lists, links, alt text, color contrast, tables, and videos, captioning, you should be okay. Okay, Angela, what if you've got a lecture you've given verbally and screen shared the PowerPoint? Yeah, it's okay, yes, and the PowerPoint would need to be made accessible. So just depending on how you're using it, et cetera. I was just sort of talking about the context where I noticed many instructors in fully asynchronous just throw the PowerPoint up there because they figure, somebody might find it useful without all of the contextual information, but you've got to make it accessible. So is it really useful if it doesn't have the context that it sounds like you're providing? But in either case, you would need to make it accessible. Okay, Catherine, the checker's under review. All right. The Word document itself, Karen, I didn't provide it. I was just using it as a demonstration. And Karen, you can use, and I may have already answered these, so hopefully let me know if I don't need to anymore, but the underscore, it's not verboten. It's just probably going to be read by a device. So a space is better because a space won't be read in the same way. If the screen reader device is reading a title, it'll just say PowerPoint accessibility checker versus PowerPoint _ accessibility _ checker. And again, it depends on the screen reader itself as to how it's going to interpret that underscore. How do you fix merge cells? Best line of defense is to not start with them, but if you're going back and fixing something, you'll need to unmerge them. And then usually what happens is somebody will say they have 3 columns of data in an Excel sheet, and they want one title for those 3 columns. That's when they'll merge the cell. And that would be a problem because a student who's not visually seeing, they're not going to understand that that merged thing that visually is going atop 3 columns, it's relevant to all 3 columns. They're not going to know that. So talk to your DSPS people. I hear different things. What I would do is I would make each column have the same title so that, and maybe it's, say, I'm making it up, the column, now I can't even think of data, but you want to make sure that you're not having merged cells. So if each cell needs its own separate title, that's what you would do. It's probably not going to look as pretty, and yet that's what's going to make it available to students that aren't able to see the document itself. Hopefully, Tom, I said that in a way that makes sense. Okay. Yes, the recording, CVC has, well, I won't even go there. It's not always easy to find. So let me show you where you can find it. If you go to cvc.edu/events, you will find this little link that says our YouTube channel, and that's where we're archiving all of our videos. So you can just, the easiest way, rather than having you try to find our YouTube channel, the easiest way is to just go to the events calendar and click this link. They are by default arranged in chronological. So the most recent will be toward the top. And so once this gets rendered and etc., we'll upload it to YouTube. Captioning usually takes 3 or 4 days, so it probably won't be ready till Monday or Tuesday of next week. But the video will be posted. I hope to get to it today or first thing in the morning. But that's where you can find the archive of the recording. Hopefully that made sense. You're very welcome. I'm glad that you found the tips helpful. And let me see. Okay, Patricia, I just saw you said you had your hand up with a question. Do you still have a question? Feel free to unmute.
Well, I'm hearing that the sense I'm getting is that PDF should just not be used. But I've always been concerned about providing a Word doc or a PowerPoint like the original work product that I create to my students, because I worry about the content being altered in some way. And there's no way getting around that then, right?
If that's a big concern for you, then I guess a PDF would be the safest thing. Just know PDFs are much harder to make accessible. So you would just need to weigh the concern about altered content, and is there another way to approach that concern versus the time it's going to take to remediate the PDF. There isn't an easy answer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, great, Marie. I don't know about Keynote, Gordon, so I can't speak to that. I'm sorry. My fallback for anything I want to know is Google. So my answer would be Google how to check accessibility in Keynote, and somebody will undoubtedly have created a video or a document or something that will answer your question. I'm just not that person. Guidance for alt text with math equations. You're welcome, Gordon. I'm not a math person. I'm not a not, there's many things I'm not that kind of person, but it really depends on how you're using it, et cetera. I know in Canvas, there is the built-in symbol thing, which I've heard from math people isn't necessarily the best, but it's what we've got. I'm not sure in Word, let me look at Word, if I can find it. If there is also, I don't know if there are math equations in Word. I'd have to Google it. But there may be a tool that would allow you to, and maybe somebody who does math knows whether there's math. Yes, okay, so Tatiana is telling us there is math equation in the insert. Okay, perfect. Well, wherever it is. There it is. Okay, so you've got those things to help you. So rather than make an image of an equation, for example, and then have to describe it in alt text, again, depending on the context, it may be better to use the equation tool so that a screen reader device is actually, it's like primary source versus secondary source, if that makes sense. And I don't know a specific resource for equation guidance. Google would be where I would start, or I know that the CVC has a math community or STEM community of practice. And it may be that among your colleagues in that community of practice, there are people that have a lot more experience with specifically using tools for math type accessibility stuff. It's not something I'm real familiar with, obviously. I'm going to put in chat, Bob Nash is the person at CVC who is sort of managing the communities of practice. And so I'm going to put his email there. You can get in touch with Bob and ask him to be invited into the math community of practice, and then check with the people in that group about the kinds of resources that are going to be really helpful to you. I'm sorry, I don't have a more specific answer. Any other questions that we can talk about today? And I'm going to take a sip of water while you're thinking. Feel free to unmute if you don't want to type in chat. Okay, I've either stunned you into silence or you have no questions right now. You're welcome, Tracy.
I have a somewhat unrelated question.
Yes, Helen, hi.
Hi. I don't know if you remember me, but we work.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
With the answer course.
How could I forget another Helen? Come on.
Yeah. So now I'm not at the answer anymore. I'm at College of San Mateo. And I'm wondering how I can go through the same process to have my classes badged.
You talk with your, and what Helen is talking about, for those of you that may not know, we have a course review process. You said Santiago Canyon? Uh-oh, did I freeze or Helen, did you say Santiago Canyon was the college?
The College of San Mateo.
San Mateo, okay. I don't believe they have a local poker process. So what you would do is find the poker lead for the college and tell them you would like to go through Course Design Academy again.
Okay.
And if you recall, let me real quickly, and then I also want to go back to Catherine's question about captioning. I forgot about that. If you go to the Online Network of Educators site and go to the Course Design Academy tab, and then go to how can I participate? We have a link for who the campus poker leads are. I don't remember who it is at your college, so I don't know it offhand, but there's the list. And so you would be able to just scroll down and find them and then get in touch and say, hey, I did it before, I'd like to do it again. What are the steps at this college?
Oh, okay. So where's the page?
It's a little convoluted. So if you go to onlinenetworkofeducators.org, and I'll put that in chat, networkofeducators.org. and then go to the Peer Online Course Review tab. And from there, click on Course Design Academy. And from there, scroll down to how can I participate? I don't know why it's hidden behind 12,000 layers, but that's where it is. And in fact, let me put this in chat, and then you can just open it up and you'll have it for when the webinar is done.
Okay, wonderful. I just want to thank you so much.
Absolutely. Okay, let me go back up to Catherine's question. Scrolling. Closed captioning for math. Understand this is not the topic, but hoping some. Okay, so what, Catherine, can you tell us a little bit more about your question about captioning for math?
When I'm preparing a video for students, or I'm using Zoom, and I have math, I write the equation on the board.
Right.
And then when I go to the closed captioning, the caption comes across, the automatic caption
Gobbledygook. Yeah.
as phonetic.
Yeah.
And so should I just write the equation in there, or should I write the words for the equation?
Great question. Because I'm not actually trained in as an access, I've just picked it up street cred. I don't know, and I don't want to give you the wrong answer. So what I would recommend you do is ask that question of your campus DSPS person, because I don't want to say, oh, just leave it phonetic, or no, you should definitely use the equation, when the person who's really trained in that may have a different answer. So I'm not trying to put you off. I just don't want to tell you the wrong thing. But it's a great question. And if you don't have anyone, Catherine, at your college that can answer that, write the Accessibility Center, because they are the ones with the training. And so they would be able to give you an answer better than I. Mine would just be, this makes sense, but I don't really know.
Okay, thank you. So the statewide level would be the Accessibility Center?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes, for our system. There may be other places, but for our community college system. But I would think somebody at your campus DSPS, they're going to have some kind of accessibility specialist who should be able to answer that question.
We do, but I feel I've asked in the past, but I will ask again.
Okay.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay. Did somebody put a new question? Scrolling down. You're welcome, Sarah. Oh, you learned what PIA means. Sorry. I can't say what it means, but hopefully someone told you what it means. I can say pain in the ascot wearing neck. That's what it means. Any other questions? We got a couple more minutes, or you can go on your merry way, whatever works for you. But if you've got a question, I'm here to help, I hope. Okay, great. Well, I will take that as you're saturated with information for now. I appreciate you taking the time to spend with me this afternoon, and I will look forward to seeing you at some point in the future. Bye. And remember to get the video, if you go to the events page for cvc.edu and then click on the YouTube link, the archive should be up there by tomorrow morning. All righty. Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Ellen.
You're welcome.